Yeah, that I see you over the years. Everywhere I turn, there you are. If it's a newspaper, if it's television, and in all the different stations, you are indestructible. They want to destroy you and they can't.
Live from the KHJ studios in Hollywood, it's John Barbour's live Friday night talk show. In studio, Angeline comes down off her big billboards to talk and sing to John. John takes to the streets in a wine challenge when he asks residents of Beverly Hills and Skid Row if they know the difference between French and California wines. A special guest appearance by Ricardo Montalban. And Vince Calandra, former talent booker for the Lake Joan Rivers show, talks about talk shows. Now, as Mr. Montalban says, here is our indestructible host, John Barbour.
Good evening and welcome to PBS, the Prurient Broadcasting System. Tonight we have real educational television. Now, educational television is when you learn something, and tonight we're going to learn something about Angelyne. There hasn't been so much excitement around KHJ since Jack LaLanne had a hernia. Now, we have, in putting together this show, we have a very small staff. He's about 4'6". Actually, we have only about 3 or 4 people who put together this show, but this week, because of Angeline's appearance, we have about 40 unpaid volunteers cluttering up the hallways, and a couple of them have even brought me this week's issue of People magazine. It's the Summer of Love issue, and of course there is Angelyne and her big billboard on page 73, and they brought it in because they said I should be abreast of what's going on in Angeline's career. Well, I can't tell you how excited we are about the prospect of learning something about this mystery lady on the billboards, and I think she might be a whole lot smarter than you think. Roz and Frank, could you hand me my Gene Scott blackboard for a minute, please? Thanks very much. Last night I watched Donna Rice on 2020, and today Entertainment Tonight and Variety and the Reporter reported that Donna Rice on 2020 got the biggest ratings. So around here today, the staff has been affectionately referring to the fact that we have Angelyne here on our version of 40/40. But when I was watching the show last night, I must tell you, Donna Rice did not impress me a whole deal, a great deal. She got no money from Barbara Walters, and as far as I know, she didn't get a whole lot from Gary Hart, especially money anyway. And her sleazy friend, she said, got $150,000, which doesn't speak a whole lot for Donna Rice, but I must tell you, Angeline's getting money here tonight. We're paying Angelyne, so Angeline's going to be making a little more than Donna Rice. Now, you know, these billboards, I understand, according to People magazine, this promotional campaign for Angelyne has been going on since 1981, and that means it's been going on for 6 years. And according to People magazine, this billboard at the right next, it's the parking lot at Huntington Hartford Theater, cost $22,000. So after 6 years and the $22,000 investment, it's paying off for Angelyne because she got this show, this local show, and a couple of $100. But we've had all kinds of calls. I mean, aside from the fact that Angeline's gonna talk, it just shows what a wonderful town Hollywood is. I mean, there are a lot of big stars. I mean, even bigger than Angelyne, because they have speaking parts in movies, and they get to put their hands and their feet in the cement at Grauman's. Now, here's Angelyne, who doesn't speak in any movie that anybody knows of, and yet, through the magic of promotion, she's got half her body in a brick wall, and as Hal Peretz, our production supervisor, says, it's the half that eats. But we got a call while we were talking. Now, we haven't talked to Angelyne. And when I say that we only have a staff of 3 people, we're not like the Tonight Show or anything. It's obvious we're not like the Tonight Show. I mean, it's a low budget. If it weren't for the camera, this would be a radio show. But the point is that nobody gets to talk to any of the guests. We all think, gee, that would be interesting. And nobody had ever seen Angelyne in a talk show, and nobody had ever heard any conversations about her. So we thought, let's try to get a hold of her. Well, I mean, on the phone or on the show, or physically if you're Hal Peretz, our production supervisor. But in any event, we finally did get a hold of Angelyne, and while we were talking to her on the phone, what happened is a lot of people who have had contact with Angelyne along the way got in touch with us. So aside from the fact that she's going to talk, we got a call from Ron Burdett, who is president of the Sunset Post. Ron helped edit the very first music video that Angelyne did called my list. And he says, John, you got to have her on the show, and you got to show the video because everything Angelyne, she's good luck, and everything she touches gets bigger. And she says that she came by here, and our production facility got bigger. And so not only is Angelyne going to sing, but you're going to see a little bit of that. And my next-door neighbor, Bob, he's legally blind, and he says tonight's going to be the first night that he's going to be touching the tube when he watches television. But aside from Angelyne, we got a really interesting show. Vince Calandra is known throughout the television talk show industry as the dean of talk show bookers. He is the man who years ago booked the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. He booked Laurence Olivier on the Mike Douglas Show, and he was the lead talent booker of the late Joan Rivers Show, starring the late Joan Rivers. And he's going to come by and talk candidly about what he talked about in the Wall Street Journal, which is the problem of trying to get guests on talk shows. And the story he tells you about trying to get Lee Iacocca is just absolutely terrific. And then, of course, we class up the show a little more than with all the rest of us with the perennial Mr. Class, and that's Ricardo Montalban from Fantasy Island. Now, we're going to be right back, and we're going to take a visit to Beverly Hills in Skid Row, and then we're going to talk to Angelyne and the rest of the folks. We'll be right back. But you remembered that the movie existed, right? And you don't remember the name of it? You know, excuse me. Oh, welcome back. We're just talking to some people on the floor here when they get up about, and maybe you can help us, because when I say it's the first time that we're going to be talking to Angelyne, it'll also be the first time that you'll be talking to Angelyne. But for the last 3 days, we've been trying to rack our brains around here about a movie that was made in 1950, and I keep thinking that it starred Judy Holliday, and somebody thought it was Jane Mansfield. I don't know. But it was quite a successful movie about a young, attractive blonde who became famous by putting her name on a billboard. And if there's somebody out there who happens to be a movie junkie, would you call in? The number here is 1-800-222-6652. That's also the phone number to talk to Angelyne. But if you do happen to have that piece of information. The piece of material that we're going to show you now is a piece of material that I ran almost a year ago when I was doing a couple of weeks late night at ABC. And I'll tell you 2 reasons why I'm running that piece of material. First of all, I had a number of requests when this show started from people asking to see this piece of material that we ran on that late night ABC show, because they said when they described it to their friends didn't believe what they were describing, and I didn't want to run it. But because Angelyne is going to be on the show tonight, and because I think maybe more people might be watching because it's the first time we've had an ad in the Times or the Examiner, we thought it might be a very nice time to show that particular piece of material. I shot it a little over a year ago, and it was based on a cover story in Time magazine. That's the reason I went out to shoot it. But 2 weeks ago, Los Angeles Times food section devoted an entire page to this very subject, so it makes it a little timelier even now. For those of you who saw it then, this is for you. Those of you who haven't seen it, I think you're going to enjoy it. Angelyne, could you roll the tape, please?
John, Melanie rolls the tapes, not Angelyne.
Oh, could you roll the tape, please? I'm sorry.
For generations, there's been sort of a cultural battle between the French and the Americans. The French claim their films are more artistic than our films. The French think Christian Dior is better than Calvin Klein, that Chanel No. 5 is better than Charlie, and they claim their croissants are better than our donuts, and that their ability as lovers is so superior, there's no such expression as American kissing.
The latest battle is in the bottle, California wines versus French wines. The French and some wine connoisseurs insist that comparing California wines to French wines is a little like comparing Penny Marshall to Brigitte Bardot. You might take a sip if you're thirsty. So like Pepsi, we decided to take up the challenge and let the drinkers decide.
According to both U.S. and French government statistics, the largest consumers of wine are the very rich and the very poor. So for our wine challenge, we selected 2 sites. First, on Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills, we set up Bar in Giorgio's, one of the most exclusive clothing stores in the world. For our second wine challenge site, we set up Bar at the corner of 3rd and Main Streets in a less affluent section of downtown Los Angeles. For this challenge, we chose 2 red wines popular in both countries, recommended by wine expert Ed Cherniak. The California entry was $1.79 a bottle. The French red, Ed suggested, was a little more.
Chateau Lafite Rothschild. It's a 1979 and it's $55.95.
Is that a case?
No, that's per bottle. How many cases would you like?
I'd like 2 cases, but I could only afford 2 bottles. At Giorgio's, I was assisted in our wine challenge by Giorgio's own French bartender, Michel. Michel uncorked the 1979 Lafite Rothschild, while I unscrewed the February California. The French Rothschild was poured into decanter and glasses marked A, and the California into those marked B. We didn't tell our wine tasters and testers the prices, just that one was a popular California wine and one was a popular French wine. In advance, nearly everyone said he or she could easily tell the difference.
Yes, I do know. I drink a lot of wine.
How about you, Mark? You drink much wine?
I could tell.
And all the bar mitzvahs.
You drink wine at bar mitzvahs?
Absolutely.
Would you say you're a bit of a connoisseur?
Oh, yes.
I am a member of the Orange County Wine Society. And every California lady carries.
In order to keep the test fair and not confuse the taste buds and palate, sometimes the testers got A first and sometimes B, but remember, B was always the California.
I'd stand here all day and do this.
I drink to your health. Nah, let's drink to your wealth. You're my bon ami. Hey, that's French. A liberty fraternity.
I like this B better because it has a fruitier taste. I liked B much better. It's sweeter.
B wasn't sweet, it was dry. The B tastes like it's French.
I think B is French. I can say we both prefer this.
B. I think B is French.
I like B because I felt it was smoother going down. Okay, then I'll take B. I felt that A was a little sharp. Of course, now the expensive one's going to be A.
I preferred B.
Of the 17 people at Giorgio's who took the test, amazingly, only 2 picked and preferred Glass A, the Lafite Rothschild.
You were the only one in a dozen people who has not only preferred it, but knew it was a French wine.
Oh.
What do you think about that?
Well, maybe I'm a connoisseur.
I've changed my mind because it tastes better now that I know how much it costs. It's the real thing.
I hope my husband won't watch this because he has a wine cellar. He would be very ashamed of me.
After testing Giorgio's customers, we sent Michelle, the bartender, and our assistant out of the room while we prepared the test for him.
Now, do I get a free bottle of that good stuff?
The French good stuff, the $55 a bottle Lafite Rothschild, is still in A.
I would prefer this one here.
B?
B, yes. Over A.
Well, what would you say, Michelle, if I told you that the wine that you chose is a cheap $1.70 a bottle?
I wouldn't believe that. I wouldn't believe
and
that.
And the A is a Lafite Rothschild that costs
Well, I don't think I believe it.
Huh?
I don't believe it. As a Frenchman, I can tell you, obviously, the difference.
Well, you should be ashamed of yourself.
I am indeed, yes.
At our second test site at 3rd and Main Streets in downtown Los Angeles, we were without the assistance of our French bartender, Michelle. But fortunately, Tim, one of the regulars here, dropped by, dropped what he was doing, and offered to help.
Can you get it open?
With Tim's able assistants and testers waiting in line, we again put the $1.79 a bottle California wine into B and the $55 a bottle Lafite Rothschild into A. However, before we could serve our first tester, we had a few interruptions.
We're out preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ amongst a crooked and perverse nation.
Because God sent his son.
Well, thank you very much for the kind words.
Following the preachers came the police, who apologized for taking this fellow with his hands up and 2 of our other testers away.
Why here? Why out of all the places in the whole city? Why here? Why don't you go to Beverly Hills?
I explained to these concerned citizens that we'd just come from Beverly Hills and now it was downtown's turn. They turned and left. Now it was time for the test. Out in the open, I had no way of concealing the California B from the French A, so each serving I told my testers to turn around. Carlos took me literally and turned all the way around.
Turn around. Wait, don't look. Okay.
As in Giorgio's, we mixed up the order in which A and B were served, but A was always the expensive Lafite Rothschild and B the inexpensive California.
B's the California wine?
Right.
Why do you say that? Why do you say that?
Remarkably, at 3rd and Main Streets, 4 of our testers immediately picked and preferred A, the Lafitte Rothschild, which was twice as many as at Giorgio's.
Well, Killer Joe, you're absolutely right.
The 8 remaining testers thought B was better, but only Tim, our assistant, picked it as the California wine. Perhaps it is unfair to put the cork on this test without hearing from the vast middle-class majority. Since that's the American way, we're going to continue our wine challenge throughout middle-class America. Watch for us on the streets of your hometown. Have your sip and say in this international challenge. Join our wine party.
You'll notice that when I got ready to go out and do that story, when I was talking to the wine expert at Vendome, I didn't identify the cheap California wine. Well, it's not a cheap wine, it's an inexpensive wine. And the reason I didn't do that is because I thought when I went out to do the test that that wine was going to absolutely get killed. But as you can see, not only do the people at Giorgio's overwhelmingly appreciate that wine better than the expensive Lafitte Rothschild, but downtown, only the residents downtown knew the difference, and even though they could spot the difference, they preferred the B also. Now, at that point, I couldn't identify the inexpensive wine because then it would sound like a commercial. Now, I know that some of you are wine connoisseurs, as are your film connoisseurs. And so if you'd like to know the name of the inexpensive wine, don't call, but send a postcard to Wine Challenge, care of this show, KHJ-TV, 5515 Melrose Avenue in Hollywood. And please contain a returned self-addressed envelope, and we'll send it back to you. Not the wine, we'll send the name of the wine back to you. Also, I would like to thank those of you, this week I must have asked 20 people in this business who are really film buffs and who know films if they knew the name of that movie, which I said I thought starred Judy Holliday, in which a young lady became famous just putting herself up in posters. And during the break, we got 12 calls from you folks out there saying that the name of the movie was It Should Happen to You. It did star Judy Holliday, and it did star Jack Lemmon. Well, when we come back, we'll meet a young woman, a young mystery woman, whose art is imitating, or whose life is imitating art. We'll talk to Angelyne. We'll be right back. Welcome back. It's at this point in the show that I'm going to introduce Angelyne, and I don't know a whole lot more about her than I guess you folks do, who just have seen the billboards first on Sunset Boulevard and Ventura and Lamp Post, and now on that brick wall next to the Huntington Hartford Theater, and other than what I read in People magazine. But like you, I'm very curious to meet her. But I've gotten a lot of phone calls since the first time I talked to her on the phone a couple of weeks ago, and especially this week, and yesterday I got this. This was in the mail, and so I guess it's the very first time I will be introducing somebody by way of reading a piece of apologetic mail to them. It's from a woman named Sandra Tarrant, I think, Farron or Tarrant in Laguna Beach, California. It says, "Dear John, I think you owe some people an apology. I've been a big fan of yours since you were a critic on Channel 4. And your stories were the best things about real people on NBC. I've been watching your new show, and up until this week, enjoying it." Your commercial for the show, in which you were promoting the appearance of that woman, Angelyne, on the Billboard show, was absolutely out of line. The business of you sitting on her and then saying maybe the music should be something like Climb Every Mountain was unbelievably sexist, and I think the person you owe the biggest apology is to the lady, Angelyne. Yours, a little disappointed, I guess, but still watching Sandra. When we did you have? So please welcome Angelyne. Angelyne, I'm so glad to see you. First of all, I'm glad that you're here. But did you happen to see the promo during the week in which I was seated electronically? I was seated on your shoulder, and we were talking about your being on the show. Did you happen to see that?
I did see it. Mm-hmm.
Were you offended in any way by the? It was an ad lib remark where I said maybe the music. They were playing "Hooray for Hollywood," and I said maybe it should be "Climb Every Mountain." So if indeed you were offended, I am sorry, and I apologize to you and Sandra. It was just.
I'm not offended at all.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that because, I mean, when I see the billboard, and especially see you here in person, the song that comes to mind is not Tiny Bubbles, you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, could I ask you a few questions about what was in People magazine? How long has the billboard campaign been going on?
6 years.
And how did it start and why?
Well, I initially started as a rock singer, but the billboards turned me into a sex goddess.
Well, when you say the billboards, was the rock group known as the billboards?
No, you know, the billboards the campaign did. See, my manager at the time didn't want my looks to go to waste, so he plastered posters everywhere.
As a result of the posters, did people come in to see the rock group? What was
Yes,
the rock
they
group?
did.
What was the rock group?
Well, I don't want to mention it.
Oh, you don't want to mention
Not
it?
really.
Are they still
Not
in
yet. I want to save that for the story for Time magazine.
Okay. No,
I wasn't supposed to tell you that.
No, that's all right. But is the rock group still in existence?
I have my own band, but it's called Angelyne.
No, but I mean at that time, the rock group that you were doing the promos for, are they still in existence? That wasn't your group.
No, I fronted the band then, too.
Oh, you did front
yes,
the band?
Yes, I did. I always did,
Oh, I see. But in the article, you say that you were without, and I'm just quoting the article, you say you were without talent, so...
Well, just between me and you, that was a concoction that my manager and I put together. That way, when they see me perform, they won't think I'm not talented.
Now, your manager, is that the one that's mentioned in the magazine?
That's right.
What's his name?
Hugo Maisnick.
Hugo Maisnick. Now, it says that he is... If he's a manager, he manages rock bands, or is he,
actually he's my personal manager.
And what? I mean, but does he handle? I mean, excuse me. Does he manage?
No, he doesn't handle me.
No, I know. No, I mean, does he manage other acts, other performers that we might know of?
No, because he doesn't have enough money to handle anybody else after handling me.
Well, that billboard cost how much?
Well, it's not just the billboard. It's the accumulation of money through all those years. It's millions of dollars.
Has Hugo got... Well, he hasn't got it now, but I mean...
No, it's not all his money. I mean, some of it was mine.
Some of your money?
Yes, of course. And don't ask me where I got it, because I'm not going to tell you.
Okay. Where were you born?
Hollywood.
You weren't?
Yes, I was.
Were you really?
Mm-hmm.
You have brothers and sisters?
No.
You're an only child?
Mm-hmm. No, well, I do have a sister.
Is your sister younger or older?
She's a year older.
What does she do?
Let's talk about me.
No. We'll talk about you because obviously we're going to talk about you, but how does your sister feel about what it is that you do?
Well, she loves it. She's just not ambitious like I am.
Well,
she likes to play and have fun and do nothing.
Well, Angeline, if you have spent millions of dollars in those billboards, are those billboards just in Los Angeles or are they in other cities?
Well, they were in Times Square.
Times Square?
Uh-huh.
How much did that cost?
Quite a lot of money.
And how much reaction did you get from that?
It's freezing. Is there a chill in here?
Well, it's
cold.
The air, excuse me.
Feel how cold my hands are. Aren't they freezing?
Yeah, they are cold. Could somebody please to turn up the air conditioner?
Turn it down,
Listen, feel how warm my head is.
Oh, yeah.
But, so I don't, yeah, I can understand it. If you want my jacket? I'll be...
Well, I don't want to...
Have you gotten any offers to be in movies or in television, or the clip that they run in Moonlighting, do they pay you for that?
Well, yes and no.
What do you mean, yes and no?
Well, yes and no. They did initially, and I let them use it.
Now, I would think that you would probably get a lot of response from that. Do you?
Mm-hmm.
Do you get fan mail?
Yes, I have a fan club. Mm-hmm.
But I mean, if somebody saw you on Moonlighting or read People magazine or saw the billboard, how would they get a hold of you? I mean, how if they were writing to you?
They have to do a lot of research.
Now,
people have gone to a lot of trouble to find me when they need... Like you said, you went to a lot of trouble.
Oh, I did. Well, first of all, the first time we called the number in the billboard, it was like a disconnect or a change of... And then we
that was a mistake. One of the painters painted the wrong number up there.
Well, that's understandable.
Yeah.
And then we called the Screen Actors Guild, and we called after, and they had no record of you.
That's because I never wanted to join.
Oh, I see.
I didn't want to be a standard actress. Or...
Okay, I want to know how you happen to meet Hugo, your personal manager, and what he seems to be getting out of this. And then we want to take a look at your music video. Then I'm sure there's some other folks besides myself who would like to talk to you.
Yeah.
So we'll be right back to continue with Angeline. Welcome back. We're talking to Angeline. Angeline, did you ever see the Judy Holliday movie with Jack Lemmon, It Should Happen to You, about the blonde who became famous by putting herself up on a billboard?
I think I might have seen it, little pieces of it here and there, a long time ago.
Did that influence you in any way?
Not at all, not at all. But it's funny because in 1984 I officially became kind of famous in Hollywood. I was on the front cover of Style Herald Examiner. And that was 84, and the picture was done in 54. Isn't that a coincidence?
That is, 30 years afterwards.
And you know what else is strange? Is in People, it says Crispin Glover, and her name was Gladys Glover. Isn't that strange?
Yeah, that's an interesting coincidence. How did you happen to meet Hugo, and what's in it for Hugo, amazing, your manager, if he's had to spend so much money, and so far there hasn't been a great deal of a financial return?
How did I meet him? Well, I met him because my initial manager wanted to get posters, bigger billboards put up, bigger posters, I believe. And he went to Hugo, and Hugo just fell in love with me, as a fan.
Why did he go to Hugo? Does Hugo own a sign company?
Well, he owns a really mega, gigantic billboard company.
Oh, he does?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Well, I must tell you, whoever does the work for Hugo, the mural on the Plaza Hotel or whatever it is really wonderfully well executed. Look, a lot of people want to talk to you.
Can I say something about the mural?
Sure.
Well, I chose the painters, and I went through like 10 painters. It was very hard to pick, and I finally picked Bob.
How do you go through painters? You mean you just look at their work?
You look at their work and their temperament and all that.
Well, they did a terrific job. Good evening. Welcome to the show. You have a question or a comment for Angeline?
Yes, I was wondering, what would be your idea of an ideal date?
Oh, I love that question. Well, what's your name?
My name is Ryan.
Hi, Ryan. Anyway, I like a guy who's really innocent and someone I can tease till he can't stand it. Are you sweet and innocent so I can tease you?
Well, I think what you're saying to Ryan is maybe what Ryan might... I'm sorry if I say this, Ryan might be fantasizing because I don't know. But the truth is, I think Ryan sounds like a bright, intelligent young man. And I presume, how old are you, Ryan?
I'm 21. My name is Brian.
Oh, Brian.
Brian.
I think he legitimately wants to know, have you ever been married?
No.
You sounded like Donna Rice not answering Barbara Walters last night.
Honestly.
Did you ever sleep with Gary Hart? No.
I know
you wouldn't answer.
I know you're shy and innocent. I could tease you, though.
No, but the point is, seriously,
yes.
What would you look for in a mate? He didn't say...
Well, definitely good character. Someone that's got integrity and honesty. Someone you can really rely on his word.
Okay, thanks so much for the call, Brian. Good evening. Welcome to the show. You have a question or a comment to Angeline?
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, this is Bob Grigas. Hi, Angeline.
Hi, Bob.
I saw your picture in the newspaper today, and...
Bob's my painter.
Yeah.
One of the artists.
You were one of the guys who did the work in the building?
Yes, I am.
Well, I must tell you, Bob, you and your co-workers really did an excellent job.
Thank you very much.
Did a really fine job.
He's the one that got bit by the spider on his ankle.
I'm still suffering from that right now.
Spider bit him on the ankle while he was up on the scaffold.
Bob, how did she audition you?
How did she audition?
Yeah.
Don't you dare tell him.
No, because you said you went through 10 painters. How did she go through you?
I was doing a mural down on the Hotel Figueroa. One of the largest murals in L.A., 9th and Olympic, and she came down there and saw the work I was doing, and she asked me to work on her mural.
Well, what did you think when you began to work? Have you ever done a mural like Angeline before in your life?
not quite.
What did you think about when you started to do the mural? Now, I know a lot of professionals have inside jokes about their work. Now, what kind of comments did you and your fellow painters have about Angelyne?
Well, to be honest with you, John, we thought that her breasts were the biggest breasts in Hollywood, and that when we started to draw them up there, we couldn't believe how big they're going to be.
Did you have enough paint? Now, let me ask you a question.
They kept running out of paint.
Well,
we started running out of paint. We didn't have
Angelyne, are you like the lady who mentioned the fact that I had no business singing "Climb Every Mountain"? Are you offended?
No,
Bob very straightforwardly said he thought you had, are you not offended by that, are you?
No, I'm not. The lady's name is Sandy?
Yeah, Sandra. They were Sandy.
Sandra.
Yeah.
I want to apologize to you, Sandy. I think you're a sweetheart for defending me. Thank you.
Well, that's very nice. Bob, thank you so much for the call. Good luck to you. Good evening. Welcome to the show. You have a question or comment for Angelyne?
Yes. What I wanted to know is the reason for Angelyne having the posters posted in 1980 when she started having the posters put up.
What's your name?
My name's Tia Gold.
Tia, what a cute name.
Tia, how old are you, Tia?
I'm 20.
The answer to the question?
Why? You asked why they were put up?
Yes. Your reason for having the posters.
Okay, well, I was in a rock band, and my manager at the time didn't want my looks to go to waste while I was singing, in rock clubs, and he just decided to put posters of me up everywhere. Do you understand?
Yeah, and I think your posters are great. The first time I saw your posters were like a few years ago on Sunset, and I was like, oh, God, she's so fortunate.
That's adorable. Thank you so much for the call. We have almost run out of time, Angelyne, but could you do me a favor? Because we might be able to scrape together a little more time, and the phones are lit up here, and I still want to see some of your music video and talk a little more. Could you stick with us throughout the rest of the show? Because when we come back, we want to do the interview with Ricardo Montalban.
Okay, I want to give you something. Can I have it, please?
Okay, let's go to commercial. Let's go to commercial, and we'll come back.
Yes.
That's a gift for me?
This is for you, but don't open it till the end of the show.
Okay.
And I want to watch you as you open it, because you have to take instructions.
Okay, I'll open it at the end of the show, and we'll be right back with Angelyne and Ricardo Montalban. Are there times when you really get sick and tired of being charming?
No, because I compensate. I am not charming at home. My wife has to bear the worst parts of me.
No, I mean, whether it's movies or television or commercials, you always have to be charming. That's what I mean. I don't mean just your personal.
Well, I don't know that it is. I wonder if that's what it is, John. I think it's perhaps my background. I was brought up in a very different society, in a small town in Mexico. My parents were both from Spain, very traditional. They instilled in me certain values, I imagine, that somehow, when you're very young, those values take root and stay with you. And I was a product of a time when certain words were very meaningful that I think today are losing their value. Things like modesty, purity, innocence, politeness, and so forth. And I think perhaps there's a little bit of that left in me. And so my behavior can't change simply because I am older or I am in this country. I am what I am. And if you call it charm, thank God.
You came with those values from Mexico to the United States, and maybe some of those values existed in this country. But when you look at this society now, Mr. Montalban, you're not going to see all those values. Does that somehow affect your evaluation of your own values versus the values that you see coming down now?
No, John, because when you have an intellectual conviction about what you think is right and wrong, an intellectual conviction is steady. When you go with emotion goes like that. But I have an intellectual conviction that those values are very worthwhile, and they maintain and keep a strong home, for one thing. And I think that the strength of a home multiplied becomes a nation. And if you destroy those values in the home, I think you weaken the nation. So, of course, there are temptations along the way, to deviate from those values, but I think that those temptations are put in front of you so that you can exercise virtue and strengthen more your conviction. Without temptation, I think you would be very weak.
When were you most tempted?
Well, I mean, those were the formative years. I came to this country on the contract to Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. Fortunately, I was already married to my wife, whom I adore. I've always been very much in love with her. But I am sure that when my wife walks down the street or goes someplace and sees an attractive-looking young man, I'm sure she had a temptation. I mean, temptation is there, you can't help it. And I'm sure I've been tempted, not only in my work, but walking down the street, you know. But I think that is a time when you do practice, practice what you preach. And I think you become stronger by not yielding into those temptations. I think without the temptations, you would be a very dull person.
How are you able to pass that on to your children?
Well, first of all, I think with example. There is one saying in this country that I detest, which is, do as I say, don't do as I do. I think that's a cop-out. I think that example is the greatest teacher of all. And even though I fall very short of the example I would like to give them, at least I try to give them a good example. I think that's the greatest teacher. My kids were growing up during that very difficult period here of the 60s, and the rebellion, hippiedom, and the flower children, and all that.
Did they participate in it?
No, they didn't.
How many children do you have?
We have four children.
And what are they doing now? And what were they doing then?
Well, then they were going to school. You know, now they all have jobs and they're married. My wife and I, now we have 4 grandchildren.
What kind of jobs have they got?
Well, my oldest daughter works for Bill Blass, a designer in New York. She's been with him for quite a while. And she has a very nice job. He's been very good to her. My son Mark went to Vietnam and came out unscathed, thank God. Psychologically a little bit hurt, you know, you can't come out of Vietnam totally as you went. You were a different person.
How had he changed?
Well, in many different ways, John. It's very difficult to put my finger on it, but I see him in some aspects of him improve. He has more self-assertive. He has stronger opinions now than before. Before he was a very docile, gentle boy. Now he's a man, you know. And but of course, I think in back of his mind is, what was it all about?
Did you want your son to go?
We didn't think about it too much. My son actually volunteered.
He did?
Yes. For 2 reasons. One, because he thought it was the right thing to do. I mean, it was his country. But also, I think in volunteering, you benefit a little more than if you are drafted. You have some choice as to which direction you want to go.
How did his mother react?
Well, his mother loves America, loves her country very, very much, and she, of course, is also of the school of those days, you know. And your country is your country, and if your country thinks that you have to do certain things, at that time we didn't question it. Now, after Vietnam, I suppose, and during Vietnam, we questioned.
Your son having gone through Vietnam, and his father being a Mexican or a Latin, what does he now think about what is happening in Central America, especially in Nicaragua, where young Americans are going down to volunteer to work with the Sandinistas, and then they're being shot at by the Contras who are being funded by the CIA?
Well, you know, he's married now, and I really don't see him as much as I would like to see him. So when we see each other, it's an occasion for joy, because he has 2 children. We love a lovely little girl. And finally, a boy, which is the last one to carry the name of Montalban, because my daughters, you know, children will carry the name of their husbands. By the way, one of my daughters, her name is Anita Montalban. She married, and she's now Anita Smith. So now we have this, you know, this little grandchild from her, little Lydia. She's beautiful, Lydia Smith. But my son Mark gave us a boy, Alex Montalban. He'll continue the name. So when we see each other, it's the children and the love and hugs and affection and so forth. We don't discuss politics too much. And I'm rather apolitical, John. I become very disillusioned with politics over the years, you know.
The other 2 children, what do they do?
This man, Mark, he works at a hospital. He became very interested in. He was a medic during the Vietnam War, and became very interested in. He's very humanitarian. He likes to help people. He doesn't have great ambition about making a great deal of money. He has the vocation, so he does that. Then my daughter Anita is, she modeled here. And the last boy, Victor, works for the telephone company. It's a very good job. He's in an administrative position and doing very well.
Mr. Montalban.
By the way, I discourage them from being actors because I know they...
Why did you do that?
Well, the pitfalls of this profession, John. I mean, the insecurity, the statistics, about 63,000 members of the Screen Actors Guild, and less than 7% can make a living out of it, John.
But that's not the point. Artistic expression doesn't fall under statistics. I mean,
No.
people do what they have to do.
Yeah.
If you look back at your life, I'm sure...
I would do it over again.
You would do
I
it
would
over
do it over
again.
again.
Then why would you, if
Because there were
children...
times when I thought I was in the wrong business. It's very difficult in this country. You know, when you have an accent, you really have to scrounge around to look for roles. Hollywood doesn't write for people like me. It's you look at a role and say, maybe I can do that, and the agent goes, and maybe they... It's not... it's been very difficult in my life to find good roles.
In that sense, do you feel we're back to the business of the charm again? That you are locked into being the stereotypical charming Latin? Because now when people talk about getting a charming Latin, they say, get us a Ricardo Montalban.
Type.
You know,
Or a young Ricardo Montalban.
No, you said it, I didn't. But are there times that you just like to do something that's so away from the persona that we see?
Yes, well, I did a role that was interesting, the Wrath of Khan in Star Trek. It was the ultra villain, you know.
My son loved it.
Oh, good, I'm glad.
He loved it.
Oh, I'm glad. Well, it was fun to do because it was a man of passion, you know, and I was able to let go, you know. Hollywood has never really given me, I mean, I look at the Wrath of Khan, perhaps it's one of the best roles I've had. The rest have been sort of inane, Latin lover, slick nonsense, you know.
Mr. Montalban, you want to know one of the reasons I really wanted to talk to you tonight? Is that I owe you a 10-year-old apology. When I was working as a critic at KNBC, I had occasion to go down and see you at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion in The King and I. And I made some comment, a kind of a gag comment about walking wooden. And when I got home, my wife lit into me, and the reason that she lit into me, she said, you made a comment about something physical about Mr. Montalban that had nothing to do with his performance. And I said, well, what are you talking about? He was stiff. She says, Mr. Montalban has a bad leg. And so I owe you an apology.
Well, you don't have to apologize. I knew you didn't mean it. Yes, I had a very serious injury in my spine. And it left me with a partial paralysis of the left leg and constant pain since 1949. So it's been a cross to bear, but I know that your intent was not to hurt me. I know that, John.
Yes, it was.
No. Well, then, if we're not on television, I would lose my charm.
Thank you, Mr. Montalban, for those very precious moments. And when we come back, we are going to be joined, Angeline and myself, by Vince Calandra. We'll be right back.
Transportation for some of John Barbour's guests provided by the Elegant Coach Company Incorporated limousine service.
Hold it. Say, hold it, Angeline. Hold it. That was just too good to waste on the crew. Just tell. Hold it. Vince, I forgot. Just say to Vince what you just said to the rest of the crew when asked. Go ahead. Just.
I said, this is real leopard.
Okay, hold on. Angeline should meet this man. Vince Calandra is his name. Vince is highly respected in this industry as the dean of talk show talent bookers. He's a legend among talk shows. In the 50s, he was the one that booked the Beatles onto the 64 onto the Ed Sullivan Show, booked Laurence Olivier and Fred Astaire onto the Mike Douglas Show, and was the head talent booker for The Late Show starring the late Joan Rivers. And thank you so much for
well, I just
joining.
want to say this is a hard act to follow. It's like it's like an animal act on the Ed Sullivan Show being followed by a comet.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
No, it means, well, in your leopard outfit, the
Yes.
Animal X, that's a compliment to you. It means no matter how good the comic was, the animals are always loved by people, no matter what they do on the stage.
They get the most applause.
And so he's just, it's a nice way of his saying, you know who I feel like? I feel like Phil Donahue explaining what it is. You know, Phil's always explaining what the audience said.
Well, that means the leopard that had this is happy in heaven that I'm wearing it.
I'm sure he or she.
I'm so warm.
Vince, it's difficult to say to you. It'd be nice if you were as candid on this show as you were in the article in the Wall Street Journal about your trials and tribulations at the Late Show. But seriously, what was it like trying to book that Late Show?
It was... The problem with the talk shows nowadays, and I worked on Thick of the Night, is that I think the company, whoever's backing it, has to give it time to build. And the problems of booking, there are just not enough big names to go around. And it's tough, and also the added, the pressure of the fourth network, of them starting the fourth network and us being the flagship, also was hard.
But Vince, as a talent booker, you in your guts, did you ever feel or say to the producers or the powers that be that it is not named stars that make talk shows? Otherwise, Dick Cavett would still be on the air, and David Frost would still be on the air.
The problem I've had over the years in being a producer, talent buyer, booker, is that when I had total control, I was able to...
Excuse me just a second. Are you waving goodbye to me? Are you kidding? Oh my! You know that's awful. Oh. This is turning out to be a show of apologies. I had to apologize to Angelyne, apologize to Ricardo Montalban.
It's worth the
ride. Please forgive me. Would you do me a favor? Would you come back very shortly?
Sure.
And because when people heard you were going to be on, because everybody's interested in talk shows, they want to call in and talk to you so that we can do this again. And Angelyne, I don't have time to open.
I want you to open my present.
Well,
oh.
Could you do me a favor? Could you come back? You can see the phones are still lit. Some other time, and I will open the present on camera at that time.
If you give me a word that you'll put it on.
Well.
You got to give me a word.
First of all, hold it a second. Hold it a second. I don't know what this is. But, okay, we will open it then. I promise I won't open it then. Thank you so much for watching. And again, thank you, Mr. Montalban, for being on our show. We'll see you all next week, and have a good, safe weekend. Bye-bye now.